every night at 11 p.m. and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there.
So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
You're with GB News, and the top story tonight. US President Joe Biden has been accused of keeping classified national security material at home, but he won't be facing criminal charges. An investigation into sensitive documents kept in his garage in Delaware began more than a year ago, after it was revealed the documents were top secret and contained details of US foreign policy on Afghanistan. In his defence, the president was described as an elderly man with a poor memory. The White House says President Biden and his team cooperated fully with the investigation and handed back the material immediately. Here, Labour has confirmed it's axing billions of pounds from its commitment to environmental issues. Sir Keir Starmer says the pledge, one of the party's flagship policies, will be scaled back to almost £24 billion instead of the original £28 billion. He says Labour has had to cut back on their warm homes policy to insulate millions of houses over the next decade, but he blamed the Tories for a very broken economy. Armed police have searched 2 addresses in Newcastle today in the hunt for the chemical attack suspect Abdul Azidi. It's understood the search warrants included his place of work, but no arrests were made. Azidi is believed to have a severe facial injury, which police say could be life-threatening if left untreated. The last recorded sighting of him was near Vauxhall Bridge in London over a week ago. The minimum unit price for alcohol in Scotland is to go up from 50 pence to 65 pence. That means shops in Scotland won't be able to sell a bottle of wine for less than £6.09. The price hike will be subject to parliamentary approval and won't take place until the end of September. Deputy First Minister Shona Robertson says it shows Scotland remains world-leading in improving public health. Viagra could reduce the risk of Alzheimer's disease in men, according to a new study. Experts say the erectile dysfunction drug has been found to cut chances of men developing Alzheimer's by around 18%. Researchers say the findings are encouraging, but more research is needed, adding that medical trials tracking both women and men were needed to see if the surprise findings could apply to women as well. Now, schools were closed today in Wales, Yorkshire, Derbyshire, Staffordshire and Cumbria as snow fell across the UK, and there was travel disruption because of flooding in the west. Around 10 centimetres of snow was measured by the Met Office in parts of Scotland and West Yorkshire. There was heavy rainfall too, as a total of 43 millimetres of rain was measured in South Devon, almost half the average the area normally sees in the whole of February. Yellow warnings continue across most of the UK for Friday and Scotland on Saturday, with the Met Office urging people to be cautious. The Queen has described the King as doing extremely well under the circumstances following his cancer diagnosis. Queen Camilla said her husband, who's undergone his first bout of cancer treatment early this week, was very touched by all the messages of support he's received from the public. His Majesty has been spending his time in Norfolk on his Sandringham estate after postponing all public-facing duties on the advice of his doctors. For the very latest stories, do sign up for GB News Alerts by scanning the QR code on your screen or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Hello and welcome to Headliners. I'm Andrew Doyle, and joining me tonight is GB News' answer to the Chuckle Brothers. It's Leo Kearse and Lewis Schaefer, who was just busily on his phone before I think you're addicted to that phone, Lewis.
No, you know what it is? I've just heard good news that Trump has won his in the Supreme Court, according to my beautiful number.
He's won what?
What has he won?
He was in the Supreme Court.
Okay.
I shouldn't mention it. There's something...
No, you're not meant to break news.
Yeah.
Let's just stick to what we're meant to do, Lewis. You're always going outside the box.
Sorry.
We've got a show to do. Leo, are you well?
Yeah, no.
No.
No, I'm ill.
All right. You see, normally I expect, because it's a pleasantry, you're just going to say yes and we can move on, but now I'm worried about you. What's the issue?
That's all right, just bronchitis.
Great. OK, well, that didn't go how I planned it, to be honest, but let's move on with the show. We're going to have a look at the front pages for Friday's newspapers. The Daily Mail has got, can you ever believe a word Sir U-turn says? They're pinning their colours to the mast on that one. The Guardian has fury as Starmer stages U-turn on £28 green investment pledge. The front cover of Friday's Telegraph. Biden can't remember when he was vice president. We're definitely going to get to that in a moment if we remember. The Sun, blue what? Fan fury at footy plans. That's about the introduction of the new blue cards. And the iNews has Post Office admits second scandal may be linked to wrongful prosecutions. And finally, Friday's Daily Star. Apparently, Paul Gambaccini is at war with foxes. Those were your front pages. And so we're going to kick off with the front of The Guardian. Leo Kearse has the details.
So there's fury as Starmer stages U-turn on £20 billion green investment pledge. This was one of their big pledges, one of their only pledges that Labour said they were going to do if they got in next time round. And obviously all their sort of young, green, hippie-ish, idiotic followers were delighted. But now they've cut it in half. They're slashing it from £28 billion a year to under $15 billion. Starmer has said, well, we're just not going to need all this money. We're not going to be able to spend it anyway.
Right.
And really, it's just to make him more electable. He's just going after another 1 or 2%.
What does Starmer believe about anything? I mean, seriously, because he's continually U-turning, continually changes his mind. Then he courts certain aspects of his electorate. Yeah. Then he alienates them by going back on it. I mean, it's like, is he just trying to please everyone all at once?
Well, some people would charitably say, well, look, he listens to what the people want. And this is what, democracy should be. It's just, he's not going to listen to what everybody wants. I mean, we know for a fact that the green thing is an absolute nonsense, because if net zero was actually important, if we really wanted to reduce carbon emissions, we'd stop the boats coming across the channel. If somebody comes from Africa or the Middle East, their carbon footprint goes up exponentially when they come to Britain. Okay. So I mean, the difference in carbon footprint between the Congo and the UK is like 153 times.
Do you buy that, Lewis? Do you think Leo's right?
I don't think it's as simple as that or as complicated as that. I think just Starmer wants to get elected. He'll do anything to get elected, and he sees getting elected, and he doesn't want to throw it away. He doesn't want to be like
but changing a mind can be a good thing, right? And it does suggest, as Leo pointed out, maybe he is just listening to his voter base.
I think what it is that he could spend $28 billion next year, whenever he gets elected, if he wants to. He's just not promising it. Yeah. So it's basically a non-promise to say he's going to spend $28 billion. It's a non-promise to say he's not going to spend 20. It's very smart.
Okay. Yeah, the trouble with people who just say things that are politically expedient to them at that point, like Starmer is that once he's elected, he's got no need to appeal to those people anymore, because he's already in.
And he is in the bag, let's face it, at this stage. So let's move on to the front cover of the Telegraph. Lewis, you're an American. This is an American story.
It's an American story. It's an American story.
What's that? Is that a song you just made up?
No, it's a real song. It's called An American Band by Grand Funk Railroad.
OK, well,
it's a real thing.
I suggest we don't do the show. We just listen to you singing for...
You know what? There are people out there who are probably going to say, oh, I know that song.
Yeah, and you have the voice of an angel. I'm not denying it. But let's talk about the story on the front cover.
The story is Biden can't remember when he was vice president. And this is tragic, really. Or it's not tragic. Or it's good news. But Joe Biden, this is commentary from the prosecutors who were checking whether they should prosecute Joe Biden in the same way they prosecuted Donald Trump. A little bit of fairness.
Yes.
And they said Joe Biden can't remember a thing. But then again, that's the best kind of defense, really.
Yeah.
It worked for
Reagan.
Ronald Reagan in Contra Gate.
I forgot.
I forgot. Yeah. And I'll tell you something, the Democrats, they don't care that Joe Biden is an idiot. They don't care.
He's not an idiot, though, is he? But he may arguably have some cognitive decline.
Let's say he's dead in the head. I don't know what word to use. I was going to use a word, but I didn't want to use that word, so I called him an idiot.
So dead in the head.
So actually, idiot was your version of being kind.
Yes.
Basically.
Being kind and avoiding being cancelled because you can't call somebody that word anymore.
You can call him what you like. What do you think about this one, Leo?
Yeah, I mean, I think it shows that Joe Biden is in no fit state to go into, to lead a country for another 4 years. I mean, he wasn't really much of a fit state this time around. You can see clips. If you see clips from him campaigning for the 2016, 2020 election, and the difference between then and now, just in a few years, like there's no way. I mean, would he even make it to the end of another 4 years?
He didn't want another term. Like, we know this. He said he was a one-term president.
And he's being poked and prodded by the people around him, by the entourage, just like the Rolling Stones being made to go on tour because everybody's got to pay a mortgage, you know?
You know what it is? He isn't being poked and prodded. He's being run by his wife in the same way President Wilson back at World War I, for the people who know. You know, President Wilson, I think, had a stroke or something, and his wife ran the country.
You're blaming everything on the wives. You always do this.
I could do this, or I could say it's Obama's. Basically, the puppet master.
But I don't know. We always forget things. I forget things all the time. Yeah. Can you tell me, for instance, when Paula Abdul released her single "Opposites Attract"?
That wasn't a key part of my life.
You don't remember, do you?
In the same way...
It's 1989, you forgot. You forgot.
Yeah, but if I'd been vice president in 1989, I might be able to remember that.
But then again, he doesn't remember anything that happened during his vice presidency, but neither does anybody who was there.
I don't remember last week, to be honest.
He did nothing as vice.
We're going to move on to the Sun now. Friday Sun, Leo, what are they running with?
So after VAR farce, a barmy blue sin bin card. Blue what? So that's a load of words that the Sun have put on a piece of paper.
It actually doesn't make any sense at all. Can you just decipher that headline for
So basically, you know how you get a yellow card if you do something bad in football, and you get a red card if you do something really bad, or if you get too many yellow cards. They're bringing in a new card, which is a blue card.
And what does that mean?
Does
that mean you've done something good? Congratulations, give yourself a pat on the back.
It means you've got to cool off in the sin bin.
Oh, OK. Where's the sin bin on a football pitch?
The sin bin is to the side of the pitch.
It's not the bit at the back with the net.
No, that's the goal.
That's the goal. OK, so that's not the sin bin. The sin bin's at the side. They give you a blue card. You go and do that. Is that how it works?
The sin bin's a new thing.
Oh.
So I don't think we've had sin bins in football.
Are you a football fan, Lewis? I don't think you are you?
I am a huge football fan. Football is the best thing about this country.
So do you think they need a card for when someone is being... You know, like say they're doing an Eric Cantona and doing a flying kick. That's my last football reference. It's the only one I know.
Yeah, well, I think...
Sin bin, yeah?
I think if you got to put somebody in a sin bin, maybe you should kick them off of the field. The problem with a sin bin is it comes from Canada with the hockey players.
Yeah.
And I hate to say it about Canadians, lovely people, but the country's destroyed. And anything from Canada is not good. Football is the most perfect sport. Yes. And I love baseball, and I love American football.
Should we have a sin bin on this show, Lewis? Because I think you would often go into it. Because you crossed the line.
No.
I think we should have a wheelie bin. And you know that woman who put the cat in the wheelie bin?
Oh, I remember that,
Yeah, we could put comedians in it.
But why do you have me if you're going to... The people out there don't like when you talk about me like this, honestly.
You only want flattery, Lewis.
I don't want
you deserve
it.
Right, look, that's the end of this section. We've dealt with the front pages, but after the break, we're going to be talking about the Tucker Carlson interview, Rishi's refusal to apologise, and face coverings. So see you in a moment.
I think the most exciting bit for me is talking to people.
People who I think are ignored often by the major news channels. We're going to give news they want to hear. There's a voice there that needs to be heard. I think there's a chance here for a diversity of opinion to be expressed, which you don't find elsewhere. It's really exciting.
We don't hold back. We're free to say how decisions that are taken here
affect us all around the country. Only on GBNews, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain. Weekdays from midday.
Elon Musk has announced that the first patients to receive a groundbreaking brain implant from Neuralink is recovering well.
This is all a bit odd. The product, called telepathy, uses a robot to surgically place a computer chip in a region of the brain that controls movement.
Yes, Elon Musk says that the first goal is to enable people to control a phone or a computer just by thinking. He says that initial tests show promising signs of brain activity, meaning that patients with paralysis could one day overcome their conditions.
Not sure about this one. Joining us to discuss this breakthrough is applied futurist Tom Cheesewright. Tom, this sounds, well, slightly terrifying.
I certainly think a lot of people will be thinking this is something out of a sci-fi horror rather than reality. But this is a technology that's been a long time coming. We've been developing direct brain-computer interfaces for a long time, mostly for the sort of therapeutic reasons that are the initial goal, at least, of Elon Musk's Neuralink, to allow people who are perhaps quadriplegic to have direct control via their brains of initially a smartphone and maybe ultimately artificial limbs or a wheelchair.
It does seem fascinating how quickly this technology is moving on. I saw demonstrations perhaps a year or two ago of people playing a very simple Pong game just by thinking, moving sort of one line on a screen up and down. This seems like potentially there has been a breakthrough that means far more complex things can be controlled just by thinking.
Well, there's lots of different aspects to this technology. The initial attempts to interface with the brain used actually quite thick prongs almost that went into the brain, and they were quite solid, and so if the brain moved, they could potentially cause damage.
I'm Christopher Hope.
And I'm Gloria DiPiero, bringing you
PMQ's live here on GB News. Every Wednesday, we'll bring you live coverage of Prime Minister's questions when Rishi Sunak and Sir Keir Starmer go head-to-head in the House of Commons.
We'll be asking our viewers and listeners to submit the questions that they would like to put to the Prime Minister, and we'll put that to our panel of top politicians in our Westminster studio.
That's PMQ's live here on GB News, Britain's election channel.
I'll be like...
And welcome back to Headliners, your first look at Friday's newspaper. Now, next Monday, February the 12th at 8 o'clock, GB News will be hosting a People's Forum with the Prime Minister in the northeast of England. This will be a live one-hour Q&A where you can put your questions directly to him. So why don't we hear from the Prime Minister about how you can get involved?
Hi, Rishi Sunak here. Join me for a special GB News People's Forum Live on Monday the 12th of February. I want to hear about the issues that matter to you. For your chance to be part of the audience and to put your questions to me, scan the QR code on screen or go to gbnews.com. See you there.
And we're going to kick off this section of the show with Friday's Express. Leo, Rishi is taking a firm position in his ongoing confrontation with Keir Starmer.
Yes, we just heard from him, and this is about the trans row, a row over a trans joke that he did.
You might have to sort of fill in the gaps there. What happened?
Yeah, so basically, he's doubling down on this trans row after criticism from Keir Starmer. Basically, his joke was around Starmer. He said Starmer defining women is on a list of broken promises, but he only broke it by 99%. Which is a reference to the fact that Starmer said like 99.9% of women have penises or don't have penises or something.
If they did, that would be quite a revelation.
I've seen some films.
I know you've seen those films, and you've got a skewed view of the world as a result. But what I would say, yeah, so he was making a joke about his youth, and he listed a whole bunch of the way Keir Starmer has broken various pledges and promises.
Yeah.
And then Starmer said that one of the parents of Brianna Ghey, the poor kid who got murdered, was in the chamber, right? At the time that this comment was made.
Yeah, so Brianna Ghey's mother was in the public gallery of the House of Commons. I don't know if Rishi knew that.
No, I believe outside, actually, at the time of the statement.
Oh, so it wasn't actually in the...
No, but in the vicinity, I think.
Right.
But what do you make of this, Leo? Because it felt a bit like he was almost weaponising this kid's death.
Keir Starmer?
Yeah, to avoid answering the questions that were put to him.
Absolutely. I mean, it seems like a completely valid joke to do. He wasn't having a go. There's no barb. There's nothing about it. And to say that you can't reference any part of a world if somebody's died. I mean, men get killed every day. Are we never allowed to reference things that men?
I mean, this is the weird thing about it. Had he made a joke about Brianna, I would think that was outrageous. This should, of course, and he would be. But he obviously wasn't talking about that case. This was about something completely different. And I actually think it is genuinely quite low for Keir Starmer to exploit a death to score political points. What do you think of this, Liz?
Well, it's the same thing. We've heard a lot of these kind of instances. The one with Gary Lineker mentioning the Nazis, or Andrew Bridgen mentioning the Nazis. It's weaponizing. It's using an analogy, whatever.
Yeah.
It's
just stick to the issues, right?
But it's politics, and you can't say how low is Starmer going to go, because that's what politics is. Politics is weaponizing what other people said.
But is it not just that he didn't have an answer to the questions?
Yeah.
I mean, you know, really, is that?
No,
and it's this fake outrage. Everybody loves to get outraged. It's an easy thing to do. It makes you feel great. You can, you know, build up this momentum.
This thing, I mean, I don't like to mind read, but I don't believe them. Like I say, if he'd alluded in any way to that case, they might have a point. He clearly didn't. I don't think there's anyone in the world that thinks he was in any way alluding to that.
There are people who are doing that, just like there were people who thought Andrew Bridgen was supporting Nazis.
No, but are they just manipulating the situation to get what they want?
I think half the population is so against the other half that whatever they believe, they want to believe. I know you think that they do.
It's pretty grim stuff. Anyway, we're going to move on to The Independent now. And if only Tucker Carlson had waited an hour, his little interview would have got so many more views.
So Tucker Carlson is set to release a controversial interview with Vladimir Putin tonight. I hope you're not watching it. I hope you're watching this instead. So the former Fox News host has come under fire for his interview with the Russian president, you know, while the war in Ukraine is going on. So Tucker insists that the interview is needed to reveal truth about, you know, Putin and his motives and what the situation is from his perspective. Unfortunately, you know, this quest for truth didn't go get very far before he lied, because he claimed not a single Western journalist had bothered to interview Putin since the conflict began nearly 2 years ago. It didn't begin 2 years ago. It began in 2014. But the Kremlin immediately slapped him down and said, no, that's not true. We get loads of requests to interview him.
What's the big controversy here? Why shouldn't he do this?
Basically because Putin's a dictator, an autocrat. I mean,
but then should George Galloway not have gone to talk to Saddam Hussein?
No, of course not. I mean, George Galloway shouldn't be your sphere of reference for acceptable behaviour. George Galloway's not a journalist.
Wait a minute, how about Trevor McDonald interviewing Saddam Hussein?
I think the issue here is people are worried because Tucker Carlson and a lot of people in the American right, a lot of people in the British right, for some weird reason, they turn it into Jeremy Corbyn over the Ukraine issue. A lot of people are very sympathetic to Putin because people on the left and people on the right love autocratic leaders. What I found
is not true.
It absolutely is true. And also, there's been so much misinformation. Like there's been somebody said, "Oh, look, Tucker Carlson's been put on this kill list by the Ukrainian government," and it wasn't. It's been banging, going around Twitter, and it's not a kill. It's a list made of Russian assets made by an NGO, a private NGO, not the Ukrainian government.
You're really suggesting that misinformation goes around Twitter? I cannot believe it. Lewis, what do you think of this? I know you take a different perspective.
I think it has nothing to do with the fact that he's an autocrat, that Putin's an autocrat or a bad guy. The fact is this whole world is in a state of war. And we're going to need Russia to be on our side.
Russia's not going to be on your side.
They won't be on our side, but they won't be joined with China. We need them strong.
No, they literally are joined with
China.
They're literally using Chinese weapons. They're using North Korean and Chinese weapons.
Because we stopped them from doing that. We boycotted them. We shouldn't have done that.
So if we let them use the Chinese weapons against Europeans, somehow they'll join Europe.
The Ukraine is barely Europe.
It's a lot more European than Russia.
You know something? I resent that you're saying that because my DNA comes entirely from the Ukraine.
Okay, so now you're making it about race. You're accusing him.
I don't know. I just thought I'd add that in.
Yeah.
But the point here is my point. My point is this. Sometimes
Lewis. I'm just.
What did I do? What did I?
Well, you made it personal. You made it about xenophobia, which wasn't there.
It wasn't. There was
false
no
accusation.
xenophobia.
Not happy about that. Lewis, I've shown the card. OK, now, a story about getting fired in The Guardian now. Lewis, you can probably relate to this.
I'm walking off the pitch. I'm going to go into the sin bin. You sent me the sin bin. You'll have 10 minutes without me talking.
Maybe that's OK. Maybe that was my plan.
No, I was kidding. Kidding.
Well, tell us about the story then.
This is another story. Oh, did I just do this already? What do we? Oh, this is another thing. Protesters risk arrest and fine if they refuse to remove masks. This is new. This is more amendments that are sent into the crime bill. I don't know how it works in this country, but they got a bill. They bring it out on January 1st, and every single day they add to it. It's like a crock pot filled with stuff getting bigger and bigger. And one of the things... Do you want me to speak?
No, you can speak. I was going to.
They're saying one of the rules is that they're saying that the police can force protesters to show their faces in demonstrations.
Okay, so this is where it gets complicated because they're saying that they don't want people to conceal their identity to commit criminal damage. Criminal damage, even if you're on a protest, is of course illegal. You didn't know it from some of the Just Stop Oil protests, but it is actually illegal. Leo, is it not the case that some protesters do have some justification to retain their anonymity?
Yeah, I mean, like, you could argue that it's a good idea to stay anonymous when you're potentially breaking the law.
Exactly. What about those people? What about their feelings?
And the government's certainly changed their tune. It used to be like, oh, you've got to wear a face mask if you want to go anywhere. Now it's like, you've got to not wear a face mask. It's like, come on. I feel like they're an abusive husband. It's mental. But the Metropolitan Police have said that they've told the government they don't have the powers to stop these Palestinian protests that are happening, en masse across the UK. But somehow, I don't know, the same police forces that don't have any power to stop these have powers to stop, like, women silently praying in the street. They have the powers to arrest people with Union Jacks. So, I don't know, maybe
there is a worry here, isn't there? It seems to me that continually the government keeps implementing things to clamp down on protest. It happened before the coronation, right? Just a couple of days where they said you weren't allowed to, what was it, have things that could be used to tie something to something else. Which seems a bit excessive to me. And also noise. The police crime and sentencing bill was sort of saying that if a protest is too noisy, the police might shut it down. Now, criminal damage is one thing, but all this other stuff, masks, noise, Lewis, are we turning into an authoritarian regime?
Yes, we are, because we aren't even a regime. Because the problem is that we have so many different protesters all over the place that this is basically to stop those bad protesters who are protesting bad things that we don't agree with.
OK, well, that's the worry, isn't it? OK, well, look, we must take a contractually mandated break now. But coming up, we've got parkrun, girls doing maths and Scottish alcohol pricing. Don't go anywhere.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens. With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK, we're ready to give you accurate reporting every day. When the news breaks, we'll be there with bulletins on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Lee Anderson's Real World. Fridays from 7 p.m.
Dr. Jane Jones, who's the clinical lead for Care After Combat. Jane, thanks for coming. And just tell me a little bit about your organisation. What do you do?
OK, well, thank you for having me here so we can talk about Care After Combat. So we are an organisation, a charity, who work into the prison system, working with military veterans who've somehow got involved with the justice system and...
So there's quite a high population of ex-servicemen and women in our prisons. Why is that, do you think?
So 2014, the government did a review of who was resident in UK prisons, and what they found were that military veterans are the highest occupational group, and this obviously raises some concerns. So the government wanted to do something about that, and so they supported Care After Combat initially, just as a scoping exercise, really, to see if there was any way we could help these men and women actually, understand the problems that led to offending behaviour and go on to lead successful lives.
So what sort of offending behaviour are we talking typically for people that's in prison that's actually served in our armed forces?
Primarily, it's violence. So that is the highest offence that we work with. But of course, the military, as with everybody else, it's the full range of offending behaviour.
OK, so we're in a pub, Jane. Dr. Jane, and I guess for some people, the odd tip of alcohol is good, a bit of fun of a weekend, relax, let your hair down. But for some people, alcohol is not always their best friend, and I guess that plays a part in some of your veterans that end up inside.
Absolutely. So, speaking from my own experience, a good 2/3 of the people I work with have some kind of mental health problem or mental health difficulty, struggling to either adapt into civilian life or with some of the traumas they've experienced during service. People might self-medicate with alcohol to manage some of those thoughts and feelings.
Your weekend starts here with Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan, 8 till 9 on GB News. Big stories, big guests and big laughs as we get you ready for a cracking weekend. That's Friday Night Live with Mark Dolan. Fridays 8 till 9 on GB News. Bring your own drinks. The admission's free.
Have a great Saturday night with me, Leo Curse, on the Saturday Night Showdown. It's a crazy world out there, so come and make fun of it with me, my panel of comedians, and a couple of people who actually know what they're talking about. This Saturday Night Showdown is your front row ticket to the clown show every Saturday, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back, everyone, to Headliners. This is your first look at Friday's newspapers. We're going to kick off this section with the Times. Leo, news of trans sports records being deleted. Hopefully this doesn't affect any of your gymnastic medals.
No, it doesn't. So Parkrun denies deleting records because of transgender row. Parkrun is a sort of athletics competition set up by Blur. And they've basically they allow.
That was a joke, Lewis.
It's a joke, 90s English reference.
Never mind.
Basically, they let people run in the park or something. I don't even know what it is. But
it's called Park Run.
Yeah, I think they run in the park.
They run in the park.
And it lets people, when they do the run, lets them enter their details and self-identify. So you've had these like lumpy blokes running, winning, obviously just demolishing the records. There's been 3 women's records just smashed. And these lumpy blokes are like, oh yeah, I'm a woman on the app. So they get recorded as a woman. It's ludicrous.
But it's
absolutely ludicrous.
It's not a race, from what I know. They run in Peckham Park, right next to where I am. And it's not a race. It's just a fun run around the park.
I still not think, though, that it's a bit unfair, Lewis.
That women who
they can't possibly win. Basically,
they're not supposed to win. Everybody knows who it is.
Yeah.
The point is, women shouldn't be running anyway. It affects their menstruation. It makes them infertile.
I mean,
all the exercise.
Lewis, look at me. Okay.
But is that the second blue?
That's your second blue card. How many blue cards are you allowed in these new football rules?
3.
3. And if there were a sin bin, Lewis, you would be in it head first.
So that's like 20 minutes. You know what it is, Andrew?
Yeah.
You're so believable. The audience is sitting there thinking that you're like actually mean this thing.
I know. They always think I mean.
They mean this thing.
Well,
you know what?
This is a dangerous.
Lewis, what are you doing? There's a picture of us almost kissing. It's a very homoerotic moment.
Just to remind Andrew that we have a history.
We do have a history, and I've got the scars to prove it.
Yeah. Well, this is a dangerous story because it's telling men that women can't run faster than them.
Yeah.
So you don't really. There's some men you don't want them knowing that women can't outrun them.
Let's move on to another story now. This is The Guardian. Lewis has got this one, a story about women knowing their limits.
More than half of British girls lack confidence learning maths, poll finds. And this is from Teach First, some education thing. It says that quite a few men are not confident with maths or science, but more women is. And that can't be. It's funny. The thing about this
can't be right. I mean, look at Carol Vorderman.
Yeah, look at her.
Like, she's great at maths.
She's the exception that proves the rule.
Well, I am terrible at maths, and I'm not a woman.
Prove the rule. You know the word prove. It doesn't mean like prove it. It means like test the rule.
Yes,
that's right.
That is what it means.
That's what it means.
So the issue here is that they're trying to change something or make it so that more girls are doing maths. Or what's the
because this is in The Guardian. The recommendation is more money is spent on teachers. The fact is,
well, that's fair enough, isn't it?
The fact is, girls don't have any confidence when they don't have any lack of confidence when they open up an OnlyFans account.
Lewis, you are aware that is not typical female behaviour, right?
Do you know what it is? It's like the #1 career choice for women nowadays.
Yes.
Have you heard this? I can't
believe you're saying this.
Do you know what the truth is? The truth is, women don't like STEM subjects because you know what? Men don't like STEM subjects either. Nobody likes STEM, but men have to go into STEM because we're not attractive and we have no value outside how much money we make.
I can't decide if this is really misogynistic or anti-male. You're all over the place. Leo, do you have any thoughts about this?
Well, they say like girls lack confidence in maths and stuff like that, and what they're measuring is the confidence. It doesn't mean girls are worse at maths.
No.
It just means they don't have this false bravado that young men do.
Excellent point.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. That's right.
And that men are delusional. Maybe that's how the article should
more.
be. Yeah.
Maybe.
So I mean, the men are going to be gung ho. I'm great at maths, going out there getting all the sums wrong. The women are probably being like, I'm so terrible at this, and then getting all the sums right.
I did notice this when I was a teacher, and we were talked about this in the teacher training, that if you were teaching a co-ed group, often the boys would be the first to put their hands up.
Yeah.
They'll be all swagger and like, I know the answer to everything.
Yeah.
Often the best and brightest students would be the girls who just wouldn't do that. And of course, the girls would outperform the boys in the exams.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it just goes to show, doesn't it? Well, you've got a daughter, you should raise her to be a bit more like Lewis, you know, a bit more front-footed. That's what I think you should do. Always good advice. We're going to move on to this story, sad story in The Guardian. Now, this is about Scotland.
That's right. So Scotland is going to raise the minimum alcohol prices by almost a third. So the minimum price of a bottle of whiskey is set at £18.20.
Right.
So this is the ministers they want to put on this health tax to dissuade people from drinking, but also to raise money. Raises about £100 million a year, which, you know, pays for a lot of camper vans.
But is it a cash-raising measure, or is it what I suspect it is, which is the SNP doing its usual nanny state stuff?
It's nanny state, and it's backfiring. I mean, they say they've seen, it's had some impact and it's reduced some alcohol deaths, but actually deaths from substance misuse are soaring, particularly as, there's a big increase in alcohol abuse because of lockdown, when, you know, Nicola Sturgeon locked everybody at home next to the bottles of whiskey. But also, when you have minimum alcohol unit pricing, the price of a can of lager is £1.30 now, the minimum price you can pay. It used to be like 40p or something.
Yes.
So it makes alcohol expensive to get out of your tree on. So people then start using street barbiturates, fentanyl, things like that.
Well, there's that. I mean, there's also this point that, you know, the idea that if you make alcohol more expensive, alcoholics are going to stop drinking alcohol is utterly absurd. What will actually happen is they'll start taking money from the kids, from the family, from anything else, and you get into these awful situations. And the other thing, Lewis, let me get my high horse a little bit here. Is it not the case that this just affects the poor? You know, they're not bringing down the price of Chablis or champagne. They're bringing down the price of minimum whiskey. It's not even Lafroig. We're talking bells or teachers.
Yeah, of course it is. It's the same thing like with ULEZ or any of those other things, what the tax to drive around London. Or the price of petrol. I remember when I came to this country and I said, well, why is it £4 a gallon back then? Aren't you upset? And they said, no, we're not upset because it keeps the losers off the road.
Wow. Can you explain to Leo, though, why is it the case that this is particular to the SNP? Why do they introduce minimum pricing on pizza? Let's say you can't have 2-for-1 pizzas anymore. Why do they introduce a named person scheme where everyone who has a child has to have a state guardian for that child, even though it didn't go through? What is it about the SNP, and I'm serious about this, why do they want to control what every citizen does?
Yeah, I mean, partly it's because Scotland's a small country. It's sort of over-governed. We've got the Scottish Parliament. It doesn't need a parliament. It needs a guy with a stick. You know what I mean? Scotland isn't, you know, the United States of America. So they've got all these sort of technocrats and bureaucrats and NGOs and advisors, and they just need to sweep all that away. It's a bizarre mixture of technocracy and complete and utter incompetence.
And it's also that they bring people like Humza Yousaf in. He's about the most authoritarian politician I've ever seen. You know, that wasn't a good idea. Anyway, let's move on now to Friday's Times and news of the wrongful arrest of legitimate cannabis users. Lewis, what are legitimate cannabis users?
Legitimate cannabis users are people who are claiming that they're using it for medicinal purposes because it's not legal. It says ignorance foiling medical cannabis use. And because cannabis is not legal in this country still. Right? So
unless you're ill, right?
Unless you're ill, you might have to get some sort of thing. But there's lots of people who are using it. And what this is interesting, because if this is an article, this is a piece that's basically prepared by lawyers saying there are 3,000 cannabis attorneys who are, just in case you have any problems, you can call up, what's the name of it? Kingsley Napley. They're excellent with this.
So now you're advertising this.
I shouldn't have mentioned it because I actually have a history with these people. But I'm not going to say when.
Let's not go into that.
I'm not going to say when.
Any thoughts, Leo, on this?
How do you get arrested with medical cannabis? So what, you smoking it in Tesco?
I don't understand how that would happen.
It's hard to get arrested with illegal cannabis when you're taking it illegally in public situations. It's never mind using medical cannabis. It's been prescribed to you in the comfort of your own house.
Seems like an odd one to me. Anyway, that's enough.
This
Lewis,
is a PR.
Still trying to talk when I'm trying to go to break. This is what I'm talking about. This is what I have to deal with, people. This kind of lack of professionalism. Anyway, enough of these shenanigans. We must take this break. Afterwards, we're going to be talking about fat airline passengers, murdered tortoises, and mountainous bags of excrement.
Tired of the usual focus-tested, pre-prepared Westminster runaround? Well, so am I.
So you want higher taxes?
Is your department to blame for this? Are you rethinking this policy? Every Sunday at 9:30, I'll be sitting down with those in power to get the truth about the issues affecting you.
Let's be honest, we've known about the cost pressures of this project for years, not months.
That's the Camilla Tominey Show, a politics show with personality. On GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
GB News Breakfast. Every day from 6 a.m.
Claire, you want to talk by cars growing by a couple of centimetres a year?
Yeah, well, 1 centimetre every 2 years.
Okay.
It's unrelenting because the people are so fixated on the big SUVs. The sales have gone through the roof, and yet it's James Nix, the analyst for Transport and Environment Campaign, said the author of the report on the trend said, spurred on by sales of the largest SUVs, vehicles are getting wider every year. Now, what does that mean for us? Well, it means that our roads weren't...
Comfortable ride, beautiful engines, smooth. I mean, it's luxury, it's gorgeous.
Well, as I know, I used to have two, but I don't...
You used to have 2 SUVs?
Well, one SUV at a time, but I had 2 brands of them. But I'd no longer drive in London now because I just don't see the point, because of the ULEZ, because of the, you know, you can turn down a thing and get fined.
Parking spaces, whatever.
The growth in car size also causes issues for their drivers. The report found that largely luxury SUVs, which are about 2 metres wide, no longer fit in off-street parking.
That's true.
They also leave too little space for passengers to get in and out of the vehicles in typical off-street spaces, and they're about 2.4 metres wide, the report found. And I'll tell you, I was stuck in a bus last night trying to get home, and the buses couldn't move because the streets were too crammed with all of these massive cars either side.
Chelsea tractors.
And it was
Yeah,
gridlocked.
but maybe they're not the problem, maybe the buses are the problem.
The buses take people to their place of work and get
I'd
them
like
home.
to know when, because when I go through London, all I see is empty buses.
Well, you're
empty
lucky.
buses.
Every time I'm on one, they're full.
Well, they're obviously only full at rush hour. You see, the thing is, property developers, when they do high-rise car parks or, you know, they build a multiplex cinema and there's a car park attached to it, that's not my fault that I can't fit into their space. It's their fault. So
Well, it's all driven by money, isn't it? The more spaces that they have, the more people they can get.
I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm not here to tell you what to think. I'd much rather hear what you have to say. So, send in your opinions to gbviews@gbnews.com. Keep them clean, and you never know, I might read them out. With my panel here on Jubes & Co, we debate, we get stuck into the issues of the day on a show where all views are welcome, especially yours. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Headliners. This is your first look at Friday's newspapers. And to The Guardian now. Great news for an underrepresented group. Leo.
So the Oscars are going to add a new category for best casting. So this is going to be the first time a new category has been added in 20 years. Yeah, casting. I mean, like the Oscars is already super long and boring. So why are they adding a boring category?
Also, no one's watching it, right?
And nobody's watching it because they don't watch it because it's boring. If they added in stunts aren't in the Oscars. If they put stunts in, that would be exciting. They'd show the best stunts. They'd show people getting their legs broken and hair set on fire, and it'd be fun.
But this is not fun. I mean, to be fair, though, I mean, casting is not an easy job, and when they get it wrong, it really messes up a film. I don't know if you've seen Godfather 3, but, you know, Francis Ford Coppola's daughter in one of those roles actually ruined the film. I mean, it would have been a great film, and it became a terrible film.
I don't think that was that wasn't the casting director for Godfather.
No, that was probably him.
That was him that did it. Beauty is in the eyes of the director. Beauty is in the eyes of the director.
I think Winona Ryder dropped out at the last minute, and he was like, "Oh, is my daughter free?"
Right,
that's what happened.
You're free. But what about some other things? What about an Oscar for Best Extra or Supporting Artist? Yeah. And then Louis Schaefer would maybe get an award for the guy leaning against the subway wall in Indiana Jones. Yeah. or
Wonder Woman. You're in Wonder Woman.
Wonder Woman.
They should definitely have a Best Extra. Best scene-stealing extra. You would win every time.
People have spotted me in Loki or The Duke or I'm probably not going to be seen in
The Crown,
in Star Wars, the TV show that they're going to come out.
Star Wars.
Are you actually in that one?
Is that what it's called?
Are you a droid? Are you so
No,
dressed
I
as a
am the
droid?
chief. I was the chief patisserie chef,
Yes.
but I was so far out of shot because of the design, they didn't use me.
Do you know what? Scott Capurro, who's often on this show, was in Star Wars Phantom Menace as one head of a two-headed alien.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a pretty good gig, isn't it?
Yeah.
He didn't even get to speak English because Greg Proops was the other head.
Oh,
He
yeah.
was the English-speaking head, and Scott was the alien-speaking.
Did Scott find Greg Proops attractive?
Well, I think... they better, because they were the same creature for that day.
And can I just add something before the people complain? Is it's not going to be on the main broadcast thing.
Right.
The casting thing. It's going to be in the night before. It's never televised.
Oh, I see. All right, OK. Well, let's move on now to a story about getting fired. This is in The Guardian, Leo.
So Volodymyr Zelensky has fired his top Ukraine army commander, Valery Zaluzhny, who's going to be replaced by the land forces commander, Alexander Syrsky, in a renewal of the armed forces. This has been on the cards for a while. I think it's a misstep by Zelensky. Zaluzhny is incredibly popular with the troops and with the people in Ukraine.
Yes.
And he sort of makes tactical decisions on the battlefield to preserve troops' lives. Like he's an advocate of pulling troops back to more defensive
positions. Is that why he's being fired?
Possibly, yeah. Whereas Zelensky thinks it's important to capture and hold on to every square foot of Ukraine, which just isn't going to be feasible in the face of a larger, better armed.
This guy's more of a strategist.
Yeah, a much more experienced, much more experienced general.
Yeah.
Well, obviously, I mean, Zelensky's not a general at all, but also, I mean, he makes his decisions based on what's best in the situation, rather than political. He's not thinking, but I need to, tap up Congress for more money or show that their tanks are being used well.
You need good generals, don't you, Lewis, in war? I mean, you and I often talk about war and the tactics of war. We've spoken well into the night about this. And what do you think about it? I mean, that's it. You need a better general than you do a politician who doesn't know anything about war. Wars are lost that way, aren't they?
Well, I haven't focused that much on this war because this war is absolutely pointless, and and
every war is pointless.
No, some wars have to be done. But what's happened here is the only reason why the Ukraine has done this well is because of America and the Europeans.
The only reason Europe has done this well is because of America.
Is because of America.
Since like 1942.
Right, but Russia is. I'm going to defend Russia again. I don't like the Russians. I don't like them. But at the end of the day, we need a strong Russia to fight our enemies, our shared.
That is an absolute nonsense.
You have this idea that Russia are going to be on our side. This is mad.
Yes, they are. They would be on our side.
They're literally not.
They are. They are going to be on our side. I'm not going to mention who the enemies are.
No, that's an absolute nonsense. People say, Russia's this based saviour of white Christianity and all this sort of stuff. And it's like, no, like Russia's an incredibly rapidly Islamifying country. It's a multi-ethnic country. It's got lots of degenerate lifestyles, if you want to, call them that. It's got all kinds of social ills, drug abuse. They've got,
So what does the West gain by destroying Russia?
It shows. It's a signal to China. It's a signal to other strongman leaders around the world. Like, listen, if you try and take Taiwan, if you try and take Finland, it's not going to work out well for you. It's going to be an indigestible chunk, and it's going to end you as a country.
Now, I fear we're getting off topic, but I'm really enjoying the back and forth. But we do have to move on now. This is bad news for the body positivity movement. Lewis, it's in the Mirror. Now, we've given you this story because obviously you have a lot to say about people who gain weight.
You know what? I don't think it's body positive, but anybody who's fat, you cannot punish them because it's a miracle that anybody is thin today.
Well, that's a different issue. This is an issue about airlines weighing passengers before they get on flights, but only voluntarily.
That's what makes this a non-story. It's
not a non-story.
It is a non-story.
No, it's not.
Let him tell the story, Leo, and then you can explain why.
Give me the card. Give him the red card.
You want the blue card?
I want the blue card.
For
give
you,
him a
Leo.
red
card.
Okay.
See what the story.
Let's get some order here. Lewis, what is the story?
The story is Finnish Airways wants to start weighing people.
Right.
And the reason they want to weigh them is for legitimate reasons. Is they have to know how much fuel they have to take off. They have to know how heavy the whole planes are. You got big fat people, but no one is being forced to do it.
Well, either do it or don't do it.
Either do it, which makes it a non-story.
Okay,
Either do it.
this is very Finnish, isn't it? Because they're very practical people. And of course, if I go on a flight and my bag is 1 kilogram over, Ryanair charged me an extra 25 quid.
Yeah.
So if I've been, eating the pies, shouldn't I have the same thing?
Maybe you should eat some of your luggage.
Yes.
Teach them a lesson.
Yeah.
Go get on the plane with an iron.
Yeah. Why not?
Stomach.
Why not?
Yeah.
There is a flaw in this. Or do you think it is offensive to larger people? They'll say, well, why are you choosing me to work?
I just think, fat people, they've got this entitlement to be hoisted 40,000 feet in the air. It's like, are you mad? Look at yourself. You're doing amazingly to get to the top of a flight of steps. You think you should also be carried by magic into the sky? You're deluded.
But you are blaming these fat people.
Yes, it's their fault.
No, it isn't their fault. The truth is the diet is extremely addictive. Our own king.
How come I managed to dodge that addiction?
I'm going to send you in for a test, for a DEXA scan test.
Oh, no, is it going to show like there's some invisible fat around me that we can't see?
Listen to what I'm saying, Leo. It is not unusual to be fat, but it is unusual.
Is that a Tom Jones song?
To be slender. And so what we need to do is we need to educate the population not to eat a plant-based diet like our king.
Here we go.
Not to drink.
Here we go. Just eat cows. Just eat raw cows.
Yes, raw
and
cows.
All your cholesterol will be through the roof, but that doesn't matter. Anyway, let's move on. Leo, tell us about this totally reasonable request from animal rights group PETA. Or PETA. PETA? I'd say PETA.
Yeah, so no more horsing around. Animal rights group PETA is ridiculed for calling for children's merry-go-rounds to stop using animal themes because it unintentionally celebrates the exploitation of animals. I think PETA actually think that those, when you sit on the horse going around the merry-go-round, they think it's a real horse that's been varnished.
Can I just say, I do think that PETA are trolling all the time. I don't think they're real. I think, for instance, do you remember they put out that thing about don't assume the gender of an animal? And they had a picture of a pigeon and it had they, them next to the pigeon, and they were saying maybe it's a non-binary pigeon. I don't think PETA are actually being. They must be trolling.
But then why? What's the point?
I don't know.
What's the point? Aren't there like actual problems? Have they run out of problems and now they're
just got loads of money and they're having a laugh?
or the people who want to believe, and they'll believe this stuff. They'll actually take it seriously. So they're not talking to us they've already lost us. But
look, I believe in animal rights. I believe that you shouldn't be cruel to animals. All of that stuff. I don't believe in the risk of misgendering pigeons.
But you know what the problem is? The problem is they've suggested instead of using horses, they want to put Al Gore, Greta Thunberg, and it just stopped working.
Wait, are you actually joking? Yes, you're joking. Although, actually riding around on a big Al Gore, I'd pay for that. I'd be well up for that. All right, let's move on now to this story. This is about giant mystery tortoises. This is in The Independent. Lewis, this is right.
This is a very sad story. Police interview man in mystery of a 7 dead giant tortoise. This is a comedy program.
I know, that is sad.
It is really sad.
Here?
They don't know it. This is also one of those stories. They don't know. They found 7 tortoises, which I looked up. They're called Aldabra.
I'm glad you prepared.
I did. I wrote it down.
Yeah, you should have written it down phonetically, and then you would have made a fool of yourself on live TV.
I did not. The audience. I am. People like
you're a national treasure. They'll forgive you anything.
No, they won't. But I don't think they will.
They'll forgive mispronunciations, but they won't forgive the skeletons
because
in your closet.
Don't know. They don't know what it's called. Anyway,
so basically,
it's a tortoise.
Tortoises
from the Seychelles.
Yes,
they're huge tortoises. They're almost as big as the Galapagos Islands tortoises, and they're dead. They're dead.
I mean, they are beautiful creatures. The Seychelles tortoise is the oldest living creature, land creature in the world is Jonathan the tortoise. He's a Seychelles tortoise. Yeah. He's on St. Helena.
Right.
But he's something like 200 years old or something.
Yeah,
These are incredible beasts.
He's going to be the next president of the United States of America.
I wouldn't actually object to that. Yeah. What would be so they don't know who killed these tortoises? They don't know what the why would you kill it?
A man in his 50s from the Exeter area has come into a voluntary police interview. So I don't know. I mean, were they killed? Have they just died?
So this is like an Agatha Christie story, but it's about tortoises.
Yeah.
It's not. The news is there are 7 dead of these beautiful tortoises in Devon. That's the only thing about the story that we know.
Well, I'm glad we covered it. at such length. I actually think it's a very sad story.
It is
I think it's a
sad.
horrible story. So say something funny, Lewis, to wrap up so that we can cheer up the mood before we end the show.
Well, these are the tortoises that didn't win the race.
I mean,
that's a joke.
You did your best. You did your best, Lewis.
I mean, it's not a great joke, but it's still a joke.
It's at least an
I'm
attempt
no
at a joke.
Leo Curse. I'm
Anyway,
no
let's have a
genius
look.
like you,
Lewis,
Andrew.
let's have a look before we finish. Friday's front covers, we're just going to go through them again. So we're going to start here with The Guardian. The Guardian's leading with fury as Starmer stages U-turn on £28 billion green investment pledge. The Telegraph has Biden can't remember when he was vice president. The Sun has the new blue cards, and the iNews has Post Office admits second scandal may be linked to wrongful prosecutions. The Daily Star, something about foxes. That's all we got time for. Thanks to my guest Leo Kearse and to Lewis Schaefer. Josh Howie is going to be here tomorrow at 11 o'clock with Lewis Schaefer, unfortunately, and Nick Dixon to compensate. And if you're watching this show right now at the 5 a.m. repeat, please stay tuned because now it's time for breakfast.
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello again, it's Aidan McGibbon here from the Met Office with the GB News forecast. Hill snow continues in the north during the next 24 hours. Spells of rain at lower levels and further south across the country as milder Atlantic air starts to take over. That's been pushing up against cold Arctic air in the north, and in between we've had a spell of rain, sleet and hill snow. Some significant snow continues to build up from the Peak District into the southern uplands and also for the tops of the hills in Northern Ireland. Could cause some disruption overnight in places, but elsewhere, well, really at lower levels it's rain, and certainly in the south, a very mild night to come, 10 Celsius with heavy showers for parts of Wales, the south and southwest. Those continue during Friday, further bouts of rain or showers moving through parts of England and Wales, some brighter interludes at times, but a gusty wind. Meanwhile, the rain, sleet and hill snow pushes north, increasingly affecting eastern Scotland, where significant snow will build up during the second half of Friday and into the start of the weekend. 20 centimetres over the Grampians, for example, but rain generally at lower levels as we begin the weekend for the north and east of Scotland. Elsewhere, brighter